Hi, I'm Greg Schaefer, and welcome to the Virtual CISO Moment. I'd like to welcome Shane Simmons as our 159th guest. He is the Senior Director of IT Security for Global Lending Services. Shane, thank you so much for joining me today.
Hey, Greg, thanks for having me here.
So I'd like to start as we usually do. If you could go through your history, how you got into cyber, why you got into cyber, and maybe talk a little bit about that flag in the background too.
So I originally wanted to get into cybersecurity back in 2006 when I graduated high school. Postponed it, never ended up going to college. I worked as a mechanic, doing everything for years. I ended up enlisting in the Army Reserves back in 2013. That's where I started getting into IT and everything. I got deployed in 2016. While I was deployed, I managed to get 3 certifications back to back within like a month and a half: Security Plus, Net Plus, and Certified Ethical Hacker. When I got back from that, that's when I pivoted my civilian career, jumped into IT help desk, and then very quickly rose to the ranks, eventually getting CISO, CIO, starting a business, selling a business. I've always really wanted to get into security. I really like every single day is different. I think that's the biggest mentality that I have going into this job. I never have a dull day, and there's absolutely nothing that is the same between each day ever. So it's been very fruitful journey getting up to this point, and really loving it so far.
Well, I appreciate your service, and that's part of the reasons why I wore this hat here. I wore it for 3 reasons: partially because you're a veteran, appreciate that; partially because, and you're still in the reserves, right?
I'm in the National Guard now.
National Guard. Okay, well, almost the same, just a different command structure, different authorization. But also because I was having a bad hair day, and also because I'm going to the VA myself today too. So, but I want to touch on that for just a moment. With your military experience, now I was a reservist as well, and I was deployed as well too for Desert Shield, Desert Storm, a couple of years before you were. And I know that there are some things that I learned by being in the military that have helped me in my IT and InfoSec career. In fact, my first boss, and I've said this before in the podcast, he was a drill instructor in the Marines, and I was trying to get a part-time networking job at the University of Buffalo where I was going to school. And he said, well, if you can fix airplanes with a technical order, because I was a mechanic in the Air Force, aircraft mechanic, if you can fix airplanes with a TO, then you can do this networking stuff. So I owe Tom Manich, Sergeant Manich, if you're out there listening or watching, I salute you. Well, I guess I salute you that way. But what are some of the things that you learned in the military, or at least one thing maybe that has helped you in your IT and InfoSec career?
So usually when I get that, I always start off with the joke. The military taught me to hurry up and wait. It's taught
Yes.
me a deal of patience, especially with security. You know, we're working with vendors or working with various teams. Not everybody is as responsive as you would like. So that's usually the joke answer. A real answer would be the biggest thing the military probably taught me is the way to effectively communicate with different types of people. That's communicating upwards, downwards, being able to change the tone depending on what the conversation is. I think that's the biggest asset that I got out of the military.
And I think that's hugely important because even though, like, similar to you, I was in the reserves. That was my home base, and so the people that I served with there, they were similar to me, Western New York, But when you go through basic training, for example, you're suddenly thrown into an eclectic mix of different people, and that's one of the things I remembered from basic training over in Lackland. And it's funny that you mentioned about hurry up and wait because the VA thing that I'm trying to do is that I'm working on getting like a small percentage disability for tinnitus. And I've been watching the VA app on my phone, and it's like moved me between levels as far as my claim goes, up and down, up and down. And I don't really worry. I'm not worried too much about the claim. It's just, well, it's a long story, but I just want to have the record that it was done. That's all.
Oh, yeah.
The flag in the background. You talked about it a little bit beforehand. What's that about?
The ones I'm in my office right now. I like to say it's my office. It's not really my office. That's the only thing of mine that's in here. I got 4 girls, So this turned into their playroom. So the piece of furniture that I'm allowed to have in here is that flag. It's a whiskey barrel flag. It comes from Tennessee, Jack Daniels. My wife, she's originally from Kentucky. Her dad's side's from Kentucky. Her mom's side's from Tennessee. So we travel up to Tennessee and Kentucky several times a year. And I always like to pick up things. And this particular one came from Jack Daniels. So I liked it. We ended up getting my father-in-law one too. He's a veteran as well.
I love the flag. I might have to. I've been in the Middle Tennessee region since 1998, and I have never made it down to Lynchburg to see Jack Daniels. I don't drink anymore, but I used to. Jack Daniels, when I was a freshman in college, enjoyed it. One night enjoyed it too much. Ended up with a broken nose, and the only thing I remember about that, it was just my roommate and I were sparring, and it got a little out of hand. And the only thing I really remember I remember a few things, but that was the first time I ever saw Oprah Winfrey on television, was in the hospital on one of the TVs. Amazing. Anyway, I have never touched Jack Daniels since. I can't even stand the stench, so I don't know if I'm ever going to go down there and get the flag, but I like it. And for those of you that are listening that can't see, it's basically a wood flag with a copper or bronze star field. It's gorgeous. I love it. We should get back to information security because that's what this podcast is about. So as far as small and mid-sized businesses, cyber and InfoSec threats, from your perspective and your history and your experience, what's one or a few of the more significant threats that SMBs face in that space?
I think the biggest thing is always going to be with SMBs. You usually don't have the staff that's required, not just personnel headcount to actually do the work, but sometimes the budgets are constrained, so you can't actually bring in what may be considered like effective people to fill those roles. That's usually the biggest thing I'm seeing between some of the CISOs, the CEOs that I talk to. It's like, how do we make this work with a 200-person organization, but I only have like 2 people in IT? So you really that's where like vCISO services and like coming up with a strategy to address those risks and stuff would be probably paramount. Obviously, the next big thing is always going to be technical configurations, because that's how your threat vectors like phishing, ransomware are able to get in. A lot of people like to say that they have, strong conditional access policies. We have this new EDR solution. We're logging everything, but that's what they think is happening. Nobody actually goes and double checks the administrator that set it up. There's been times and times I've gone into an organization and they're like, you can't even log into our 365 tenant because we have conditional access policies and you have to be on our network. And then we're able to do it time and time again. There's bypass groups and all this kind of stuff. So I think it's a mixture of having the right people, making sure the technology that you have is actually configured to do what you're hoping that it does, and then continuous assessments. Where are we at this point in time with these various threats?
Well, 365 can be so confusing. I have recently, because of staffing change with one of our clients, I call myself now a reluctant 365 admin, and maybe I'm going to like trademark that or something. Get a new hat. Because I have agreed to help out this one client with some of their configurations while we bridge the gap and find somebody else in. And I'm amazed by 2 things with 365: the complexity and what you can do with it. And as I go down the admin side and the Entra side and the Azure side and all of that, I'm amazed at some of the granular stuff you can do. But then again, the more that you can do, the more that there is opportunity for gaps. Do you think that we're at a point right now where if you have and I'm not even going to touch G Suite or whatever they call it now, because I'm not a Google person. Let's just stick with this 365 for a moment. But do you think that SMBs are at such a point right now that they need to have somebody on staff who is, for all intents and purposes, if not Microsoft certified, have the equivalent, or 365 certified, have the equivalent knowledge?
I do. If your organization is G Suite or 365, like you've got to have somebody that actually has time in it. Just like you said, all these updates that Microsoft are pushing out, between SharePoint, the OneDrive, Teams, the actual configurations of all this, how it all ties into Azure. It's an administrative nightmare. Over the last couple of years, I've even brought in staff for entry-level and mid-level security engineers, and they'll get in there and they're like, I'm trying to figure out how to do this. Why is this conditional access policy not working? Why are we still able to add guests to Microsoft Teams? Why are they able to share documents with OneDrive with external people? It's just a constant. You think you make a change in one place and it's going to do exactly what you're hoping that it does, but then it never does. So that follow-up validation and testing. But if you don't have somebody that's in there familiar with the 365 platform, all the different components, specifically the administration side of it, it can really open you up to a lot of gaps and start exposing you to risk that's really unnecessary for the organization.
And even like places where you think that something should be, and it isn't. Case in point, last week, I needed to add myself as a recipient, as a I don't know if recipient's the right word, but we were creating a shared mailbox for a staff member who departed, and I wanted to get their emails. This was the 365 admin that I was talking about. And so, I've done it before in my tenant, but I'm like, I was going through Entra and all that. And I finally get to the page, I'm looking through there, and because everybody's telling me it's like, oh, you got to do everything through Entra now, or whatever. You can't, that's where you should do it. I go there and it tells me, well, you can't do that here. And I'm like, well, what's up with that? It's like, I mean, it's that's where you should be able to do it. But I've learned that Entra and the admin console in 365, sometimes they replicate stuff. So I went over to the admin console, and sure enough, that's where you could do it. It's maddening. It really is maddening. And I think that you brought up a good point too. This gives me a chance to plug my book. I think that for the next edition of Information Security for Small and Mid-Sized Businesses, available on Amazon, $25, you can, I think I'm going to add a section on these platforms, one for 365 and one for G Suite, and talk about some of those things, because the SMBs, they often think that, well, we're a 365 shop, everything is all right. It's become the new, well, we have a firewall, everything's all right.
Mm-hmm.
So okay, so we have G Suite, we have 365. Am I missing any other of the big ones out there? Or is it generally those two?
I still see majority of those two. I think there is another one that I've seen maybe one organization use, and I cannot think of the name of it, but it's not popular.
I was hoping that you were able to think of it, because I know that there's at least one more out there, and there are probably people screaming right now, it's blah, so, but it's all good. You also
but now, if you're talking about 365 in your book, I got you an analogy for you. You can compare the administration of 365 to group policy object management, because that's how it is.
I'm going to write that down.
So,
all right, and I'm going to attribute it to you if I put it in. So there you go. I'll try to remember to put your name in the acknowledgments. It's getting to be very long right now, because everybody's like, hey, Greg, that's a great book, but I got another idea for you to add for the next edition. I'm like, well, thank you. I needed the extra work. Appreciate it. And you also were talking about staffing in general, and that's one of the things that I think that I hear a lot on this podcast, is that people, they don't have access to the experience that they need. And you mentioned the virtual CISO option as one, which I think is a good option, and obviously I'm biased towards that. But what other options would they have as well too? Let's just say, for whatever reason, an SMB decides they don't want to go the virtual CISO route. They want to try to develop something in-house. Any ideas, tips, or pointers for them?
So some of the conversations that I've had with CEOs when it comes to this, like I'll walk into a place that just wants a normal risk assessment done, and they're like, we've got one guy over here, Jim, the sole IT. IT is Jim.
It's always Jim. It's always Jim.
So when they sit down, and at the end of the day, it is a business decision. Security is a business decision.
Right.
So we usually start off with, like, what is your end game goal here? Like, are you really just wanting to build, scale, sell? Are you trying to turn this into like an actual thing? Are you just shooting for compliance? Usually from there, it will turn into a vCISO service start, because you need somebody that's going to come in and figure out what the business wants, and then how security aligns to that business. My philosophy for that is always security is a business enabler.
Right.
In the past, 10, 20 years ago, security was probably the department of no, but now is how can we let the business do what they want to do, but do it securely and in compliance. So getting a subject matter expert in there that can say, hey, well, based on your business proposition and what you guys are trying to do, this is the best route to go if you want to get to different levels of security. So vCISO is probably the number one thing an organization can invest in if they want to build a security program. The next big thing would probably be either a technical advisor, like a contractor, somebody that could come in and actually do some of the administration, or my personal favorite is a managed SOC service. A lot of the organizations that are out there right now, you can get managed SOC, managed detection and response, managed vulnerability management services. When you start pricing all that out, even as an SMB, let's just say you try to bring in, let's just say a mid-range security person, somewhere around that $85,000, $90,000 a year. I've seen some organizations that probably have 1,500 or so employees, and they're probably paying around maybe $175,000 a month or a year for managed SOC. And then if you think about that, that's like 2 full-time staff. They could be monitoring, triaging alerts. So, what's the business value there? Then when you get into like modern day EDR and stuff, all those logs are going in there, and now you can allow that managed SOC to actually respond to and remediate stuff. I mean, you're getting more bang for your buck going that way.
Yeah, and the other thing with regards to an employee as well too is that you have the risk of turnover. Mm-hmm. Well, I'm gonna since you touched on vCISO, trying to stifle a sneeze here. I think I got it. What do you think makes an effective vCISO? I mean, what are like a couple of the top attributes that would make one successful from the business perspective? Because I mean, I think some people might say, well, to be a successful vCISO, you have to be able to earn a lot of money, and I want to get away from the money side. I want to get to the mission side about fixing problems. What are a couple of attributes that a vCISO should have?
I have seen good and bad, really bad vCISOs.
I have as well. We've come in behind some of them, and it's amazing what passes as a vCISO nowadays.
As a vCISO, obviously everybody wants to make money, but you can tell when some vCISOs are, let me resell you this, or let me give you a 40-hour quote for this type of consulting service. It's not really opening up, like, what do you want? What does the business even want? Like, why do they want you here? It's more about that partnership. And as a vCISO, if you're able to come in, sit down with your CEO, the executive staff, whoever they bring to the table, it's like, what do you want to accomplish? What are some key criteria there? I've seen CEOs that have said, I want a full-fledged security program where we're compliant with SOC 2 and 27001, and I want it all done for about $25,000 a year.
Yeah.
Well, let me just, based on my years of experience, that's not going to happen. If you want to do this, this is what you're looking at. This is what you're looking at. But being able to have those types of conversations and really understanding what they're hoping to get out of the vCISO service.
Right. Well, all of this can be a very stressful environment, whether you're vCISOing, as I say sometimes, or is anything information security in general and cybersecurity. It's tough because we're constantly having to fight against an enemy that we can't see, a situation that we can barely just tread water. We can never walk on water. For some of us, and this is like one of the worst, I think the worst job market still that I've ever seen in over 35 years that I've been in the industry. I encourage people that they need to go and do something to de-stress. Now, for me, after I'm done with my VA appointment today, I plan to go jog in the 99-degree heat. I don't recommend other 57-year-olds do that. I'm just an idiot sometimes, but it does de-stress me if it doesn't kill me. What's one of the things that you do to de-stress from the stresses of cyber?
Oh, so I do run myself. I'm actually trying to train to do the Spartan races. I'm going to try to do the trifecta next year.
Nice.
been a goal of mine, and I keep putting it off, and I'm going to end up having to have ligament surgery on my knees. So I'd like to get it done before that happens. Let's see. Outside of that, I already mentioned I have kids, so my wife and I, we love to travel everywhere. It's one of the big things. I eventually want to visit all 50 states, and I think our big destination that if we could go anywhere, it's going to be Ireland. We'd love to go to Ireland sometime. But traveling, going to history-oriented locations. My wife and I are both into history, so we like that. And I do still play the guitar from time to time. I play country now. I used to play in a heavy metal rock band back in like the 2009 era with some friends. So it's been a shift, but.
All right, let's do it. let's jam. I'm only kidding because I'm horrible with this. I'm just I'm starting to get back into into guitar playing after like a 30-year off. I've done a little bit, and actually I just I resurrected my Fender Squire. I don't know if you remember the Squire, but it's like
I do remember the Squire.
Low end Fender guitar, like for trainers. You could buy their gig pack, I think they called it. So you had the Squire, you had the amp, and you had the gig bag. And I have all three still from when I bought it, I think in 95 or 96. Well, I realized that it needed some maintenance because it didn't really work. Took it to a shop right down the street. They fixed it, got it back. It didn't work. One of the things they soldered didn't take. But I got it back now, so I'm excited this weekend. I'm going to try to play it again, but I can't really play that well. It's like, I mean, it's that's probably the best level of guitar for me. So yeah. What are your future plans? Are you going to write a country song or?
Oh no! Oh, I can't sing. What are you talking about? I spend all the time in the truck. No, you can't sing. Wow. No, big plans for me. It's a mix right now. Going back to school, knocking out the MBA next. It's the best educational achievement for me. Outside of that, I'll probably look at the next startup, trying to address some type of business compliance oriented issue that I'm seeing a lot in the financial sector right now. I got a couple of ideas to address some of that. So I'll probably looking at doing a little bit of that on the side until it takes off. But until then, still reaching out and doing not necessarily security consulting because I'm kind of getting out of the consulting organization right now. But I like security, like technology. I like building things. So I think I'll be looking for something that allows me to build and be creative and be innovative.
Did you see that the FFIEC is retiring the cybersecurity assessment tool? They just announced it yesterday.
No, so, I haven't seen it, but I've not caught up on the news yet. So that's going to be fun.
After 11 years, it's they're recommending that financial institutions go to NIST CSF or some others, and one of the ones that they choose in there is called it's the Cyber Risk Institute's profile or something like that. And one of our consultants is starting to migrate one of our institutions over to that. So I applauded him yesterday. I'm like, that was good foresight. So anyway, I'm not going to go down another path because we're out of time. Shane, it's been wonderful having you on. Great conversation. Love chatting with you, and best of luck in everything.
Yeah, appreciate it. And thanks for having me here, Greg.
And everybody, stay secure.